F40PH is a passenger diesel locomotive first built by the Electromotive division of General Motors in 1976. It is said that this is the diesel that saved Amtrak in its early years, and the F40 was such a successful locomotive that passenger railroads all over North America continued to order an assortment of different versions of F40s up until 2006. Following their retirement, many of Amtrak's F40s have found second lives, either serving as converted cab cars for Amtrak or continuing to be used as standard locomotives for other railroads. A few have even gone to museums. In continuing with our year-long celebration of Amtrak's 50th anniversary, I would like to go through all of the former Amtrak F40PH locomotives I've seen since their initial retirement and take a look at where they are now. We'll start from the beginning of Amtrak's roster and work our way up. The first several F40s we'll take a look at were part of the original order of 30 locomotives built in 1976 and numbered 200 through 229. With only a couple of exceptions, all of these locomotives that weren't scrapped were kept by Amtrak and converted into non-powered control units, or NPCU for short. Essentially, these are locomotives turned into cab cars by removing the prime mover and all associated components and installing concrete flooring and sand in the fuel tank to add more weight. Most of the F40s turned into NPCUs by Amtrak were also given side roll-up doors so that they could be used for storing baggage. They were also renumbered by adding the prefix 90 to their original operating number. Let's go through a few of these units now. Amtrak 90208, originally built as F40PH number 208, was first used in the Midwest following its conversion to a cab car in the late 1990s. It was later used on the Heartland Flyer before finally migrating to California for Pacific Surfliner service in 2006. It received a special commemorative Veterans paint job in 2015. 90208 has been out of service since 2019 following a grade crossing incident. The 90213, previously F4213, is currently in service on the Amtrak Downeaster running in between Boston, Massachusetts and Brunswick, Maine. Since its conversion, the cab car has always been used for this service. Cab car 90214, formerly F40-214, is also used on the Downeaster. Following its conversion, 90215, formerly 215, was based in the Midwest out of Chicago. It was later leased by the state of California for use on the San Joaquin trains between Bakersfield and Oakland. Amtrak 90218, previously 218, was also originally based in the Midwest but later leased to the state of California. Like the 90215, it was repainted into a California Department of Transportation scheme. NPCU 90219, former F40-219, is based in Chicago and has been used in the Midwest since its conversion in the 1990s. Amtrak 90220, previously Locomotive 220, has been used on the Downeaster since the early to mid-2000s. Prior to that, it was briefly used on Amtrak Cascades trains in the Pacific Northwest. The 90221, former Amtrak 221, is another cab car that has remained in the Midwest since conversion. In 2016, the unit was painted into the same special veterans scheme worn by the 90208. Amtrak 90224, formerly 224, is the fourth non-powered control unit used on the Downeaster trains. It was based in the Midwest for many years before it was relocated to New England in 2012 when Downeaster service was expanded. F40 number 227 is the only locomotive out of the first 30 I've seen that wasn't converted into a cab car. This unit was rebuilt as a road slug, keeping the traction motors but losing the prime mover. It was last used by the San Luis and Rio Grande Railroad out of Alamosa, Colorado. The last Amtrak cab car converted from the batch of original 30 F40 locomotives is Amtrak number 90229, originally F40 number 229. For most of its first decade as a NPCU, the unit ran on the Heartland Flyer between Fort Worth, Texas and Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. In more recent years, the 90229 has spent time operating on a variety of different trains in the Midwest and California. Amtrak 90230, originally F40 number 230, was the first of the second batch of F40s delivered to Amtrak starting in 1977. This locomotive was also turned into a non-powered control unit, but was used in the Pacific Northwest for Amtrak Cascade service and, as such, did not initially receive a roll-up baggage door. It spent some time operating in the Midwest and then about 5 years, from 2011 to 2016, in Pacific Surfliner service, getting a baggage door in 2015. It returned to Amtrak Cascade service in 2017. Former Amtrak 231 is the oldest Amtrak F40 in preservation. Privately saved from scrap, the unit is now owned by Dynamic Rail Preservation and stored at the Nevada State Railroad Museum in Boulder City, Nevada. The next Amtrak F40 on our list is the 237. This locomotive is now owned by the Grand Canyon Railway and used in regular service to the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Prior to entering tourist service in 2010, the railroad upgraded 237 by adding a separate head-end power generator over the back walking platform of the locomotive. 237 was also re-geared to run at freight locomotive speeds and given the new model number of F40PH. Ex-Amtrak F40 number 239 also ended up at the Grand Canyon Railway, entering service in 2005. This was Grand Canyon's first F40 to pull trains. It did not receive a separate head-end power generator like 237, but it was re-geared as a freight locomotive. This next F40 I saw only briefly while traveling through Iowa. Ex-Amtrak 241 was sold to the Iowa Northern Railroad for use on seasonal Hawkeye Express football game trains. It was given the new number of 678. As of April 7, 2021, the Hawkeye Express has been canceled, leaving the 241 with an uncertain future. The next group of 4 former Amtrak F40s have all been converted into non-powered control units for Amtrak Cascade service. First is number 90250, formerly F40-250. This unit is still owned by Amtrak and received roll-up doors and a Phase 5 paint scheme in 2015. It was also briefly given a Seahawks football promotional wrap. Cabcar 90251, converted from F40-251, is also still owned by Amtrak. It was overhauled and given roll-up doors in 2019. Unlike 90250, it kept its unique Amtrak Cascades paint scheme. The 90252, previously F40-252, is owned by the state of Oregon. Unlike the other 3 Amtrak Cascades non-powered control units we've already seen, it has never received a major overhaul or received roll-up doors. NPCU 90253 was converted from F40-253 and, like the 90252, is owned by the state of Oregon. It also has never received the roll-up door upgrade. Following retirement, F40-258 was sent to the Tennessee Central Railway Museum in Nashville, Tennessee. It was purchased by Chicago's Metra and re-entered service as a commuter locomotive in 2010, carrying Metra number 215. The 264 was one of several F40s modified for freight service. It is seen here on the San Luis and Rio Grande, paired up with Road Slug 227 and renumbered to 459. Amtrak 266 was also rebuilt for freight service. It is owned by the Iowa Northern Railroad. The Alaska Railroad purchased 2 former Amtrak F40s for use as cab control cars on some of their trains. Unlike the Amtrak non-powered control units, these cab cars received head-end power generators. Pictured here is Alaska Railroad 32, formerly Amtrak 268. Amtrak 90278, formerly 278, was the second to last NPCU conversion done by the railroad. Completed in 2007, the unit was first used in Amtrak Cascade service, but later sent to Southern California for the Pacific Surfliner. As of 2021, it was being used on the Amtrak San Joaquin. Amtrak 281 is the second F40 on our list that has made it into preservation. It was built in 1978 and acquired by the California State Railroad Museum in 2001. 281 is fully operational and makes very occasional appearances on the museum's Sacramento Southern Tourist Railroad. F40-295 is the third former Amtrak unit now in service at the Grand Canyon Railway. It began running for Grand Canyon in 2009. Like the 239, 295 was re-geared for freight speeds but did not receive a separate head-end power generator. The third and final former Amtrak F40 I've seen that is preserved at a museum is Amtrak 307. This locomotive is currently at the North Carolina Transportation Museum in Spencer, North Carolina. Nashville, Tennessee's commuter railroad Music City Star operates 4 former Amtrak F40s. The first, now numbered 120, is former Amtrak F40 number 332. Amtrak 90340, former F40 340, was the last locomotive converted into a cab car for Amtrak Cascade service. Following the rebuild in 2001, 9340 retained much of its former outward appearance as a locomotive. The unit never received the fuel tank skirting that was applied to the other Cascade's control units, and also was never upgraded with the roll-up baggage doors. It is owned by the state of Oregon. Another former Amtrak F40 that is currently in Metra service is locomotive number 364, now Metra 217. Prior to becoming a Metra unit, 364 worked on Virginia Railway Express commuter trains as VRE number V32. Former Amtrak 365 is now a lease unit and owned by Larry's Truck and Electric out of Youngstown, Ohio. Prior to that, it operated on AMT in Montreal and Virginia Railway Express as locomotive V33. Non-powered control unit 90368 was the first locomotive to cab car conversion done by Amtrak. Originally modified in the mid-1990s from F40 368, the unit has spent the entirety of its second life based out of Chicago. Amtrak 375 is the third former Amtrak F40 that later went to Metra. Like the 258, 375 went to the Tennessee Central Railroad Museum after leaving Amtrak and was sold to Metra in 2009, now renumbered as Metra 216. F40 number 381 was one of the last units to operate in service still in Amtrak paint. Placed into the Pacific Surfliner scheme in the early 2000s, the locomotive was retired from the Amtrak roster shortly after and went to a few different railroads before finally ending up on Nashville's Music City Star commuter train. The locomotive kept its Surfliner scheme until late 2019 when it was finally sent in for paint work. Another F40 owned by Larry's Truck and Electric and used in lease service is former Amtrak number 392, now locomotive number 310. Previously, 392 operated on Virginia Railway Express as number V31. Southern California's Metrolink commuter train bought 4 former Amtrak F40s, but only one ever made it into service. Former Amtrak 396 became Metrolink 800 and was used on Metrolink trains and as a backup locomotive for nearly 15 years. In 2019, it was retired and placed into storage. Amtrak 398 is another F40 that ended up going to Music City Star. The locomotive was given the number 121. Our last F40 for this video is Amtrak number 406. Following its retirement in the early 2000s, the locomotive was stored at the Amtrak Beech Grove shops in Indiana for several years before finally being rebuilt for Amtrak's 40th anniversary in 2011. While it kept the outward appearance of an F40, the locomotive was essentially turned into a non-powered control unit and given a head-end power generator. Following 2 national tours as part of the Amtrak exhibit train, 406 was sent to New England for occasional use on the Downeaster. And with that, we bring our Amtrak F40 exploration to a close. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more F40 videos in the future, let me know in the comments below and hit the like button too. For regular post notifications, subscribe to the channel and click on the bell. I'll be back next Friday and every Friday thereafter at 9 AM Pacific time for an all-new railroading adventure right here on the YouTube channel. That's it for now. Until next time, I'm Mike Armstrong. I'll see you down the line. Thanks for watching.